In Mouthwashing, you spend most of the game playing as the worst person on the ship. The one who causes the crash, the one who drives the conflict, and the one responsible for everything that goes wrong. And yet, he's not really the main character. Because the real protagonist is someone the game barely gives control to. Someone who doesn't drive the story. Someone who doesn't even fully understand it. It's someone who mimics you as the player. That someone is Daisuke. When talking about Mouthwashing, it's easy to recognize the importance of most characters. Looking at Swansea, we have the hard-headed guy, who despite being problematic, still acts as a stabilizing force within the ship. Jimmy is the obvious instigator. He causes the crash, drives the conflict, and ultimately reveals himself as the story's central antagonist, despite the player controlling him for most of the game. There's Curly, of course, the captain, who initially appears to be our perspective into the world, since we're piloting the ship assumed to be him, but the truth is revealed later after the crash. And then there's Anya, the nurse who comes across as unreliable at first glance, yet gradually reveals herself to be one of the most perceptive characters, whilst also being the primary victim at the center of the story's hidden conflict. As a result of this, it's easy to assume that the narrative of the story belongs to these four characters, and that they are the ones who we are actively following. They are the ones driving the plot forward after all. But what happens when you stop looking at who's driving the plot forward and start asking a different question? Who is the story actually about? Because once we step away from the controlling figures of the story and toward themes, emotional framing, and the flow of knowledge, the central characters of Mouthwashing becomes less obvious, and that is where Daisuke comes in. The same way that you, the player, is thrown into the Pony Express ship without any real understanding of what is happening, so is Daisuke. He mirrors the player's position in the story's flow of knowledge. He is consistently the one being told things, corrected, or exposed to information he doesn't fully understand, never quite positioned as someone with full context or authority. Despite being Swansea's intern, for example, and part of the same mechanical team, he remains on the outside of any true operational knowledge. After the crash, this separation becomes even more evident when he's not granted access to the utility room, the same room that, in theory, he should be helping Swansea in. In reality, he ends up occupying the same limitations as the player, observing, interpreting, and trying to piece together meaning. We can also see this in hindsight once we understand the abuse that happened to Anya at the hands of Jimmy. We find out that Curly is made aware of this abuse prior to the crash, and although it isn't confirmed, we can assume that Swansea is made aware of this when Anya talks to him in the command center. Everyone is aware of what is happening. Everyone but you, the player, and Daisuke. Just as the audience is clueless about the abuse and the villain that they are unknowingly playing, so is Daisuke, following along cluelessly to Jimmy's desire to be the hero of the story. In contrast, Daisuke makes the effort. He genuinely tries throughout everything and does what he believes is morally right, notifying Jimmy that Anya has locked herself in the medbay, and then making the climb to save her. Even when he severely injures himself, he still manages to unlock the door in hopes of saving Anya, the very person that the player wishes they could save in that moment as well. But if these perspectives align him with the player and what they know, then the emotional reactions align him with the player and what they are expected to feel. While other characters control or manipulate the reality of the situation, Daisuke is the only one who actually experiences the moment as it comes. He doesn't rationalize the situation, he doesn't try to hide anything, he just reacts to it honestly, allowing the full weight of the moment to come through. His drunken state exposes his fear of the moment and the discomfort he feels as the situation slips further out of control, both showcasing and inflicting the fear onto the player after recognizing how doomed the crew really is. Contrast this with the other crew members, who are either unable to speak, either physically with Curly or out of fear with Anya, or are deliberately avoiding the truth, choosing control in Jimmy's case and routine in Swansea's, clinging to what little structure remains rather than confronting what's actually happening. Daisuke's actions are therefore immediate, often clumsy as seen earlier when he gets stuck in the foam, but they're always honest. He isn't acting with full understanding, but he is acting with intent. Even as he attempts to fix the vent, he's working with incomplete information, trying to do what he believes is right. In that way, his actions mirror the player's own experience. moving forward, making decisions, and piecing together the reality of the game without ever having the full picture. But if these relatable perspectives help him align with the player, then it's the themes of Mouthwashing that actually portray him as the true protagonist. Mouthwashing as a game isn't about survival, and it isn't even really about the crash itself. It's about power, complicity, and inaction. Every major character represents a different response to that system. Curly represents the passive authority. He learns of the abuse of Jimmy, yet he fails to act when it matters as a leader. Sure, he makes empty promises that he'll take Jimmy off of Anya's hands, but it's far too little, and this lack of confrontation and accountability is what ultimately allows Jimmy to crash the ship. Jimmy embodies desperate control to the extreme, someone who forces himself into the hero role regardless of the harm that he has already committed. He's desperate for approval, and as a result, he feels the need to reshape his surroundings to his liking. He minimizes or outright denies the damage he causes in order to maintain that image. Swansea sits in an ambiguous neutral state. He is made aware of Jimmy's abuse, but becomes addicted to maintaining the tiny bit of order that is left in the ship, rather than challenging it. Only when it is quite literally too late with Daisuke's death does he realize that he has no choice but to challenge Jimmy's authority, running at him violently with an axe, and failing. And then there is Daisuke, the only character who consistently tries to do what is right. Despite having the least power in the ship, the least knowledge, and the least authority, he does what is right. He doesn't fully understand what's happening, he certainly isn't in control of the situation, and unlike the others, he isn't positioned to shape out any outcome. And yet, he acts. He asks the questions for clarification, he raises concern about Anya, he assists in gaining entry to the utility room, and he makes the deadly climb through the vent. Daisuke does this because he recognizes that something is wrong, and acts despite his fears. This is the vital piece that separates him from the other characters. In a story where knowledge leads to inaction, authority leads to failure, and control leads to harm, Daisuke is a character that represents action without certainty, better known as bravery. But that's exactly where the themes of the game land, because Mouthwashing isn't asking what someone is willing to do when they understand everything. It's asking, what do you do when you don't understand the full picture and are willing to act anyway? Not out of certainty, but out of an understanding of what is right. My name is Alex, and this has been Carrot Makes. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, but otherwise, take care of yourselves out there. I hope you all have a lovely day.